And you are running. And let me just check your pen. This should advance. Whoops. Yep, that's working. And here's your microphone.
Okay.
And you're all set.
Try not to blind anyone.
Yeah, don't just stare into the laser with your remaining eye.
Well, thank you all for coming. When I first suggested this idea to Doug, it was actually at least half a joke, but Doug took it seriously and said that might actually be a good topic. And so here we are, going to hear about how to not raise money, because Lord knows I've talked often enough about how to raise money, and apparently people are not listening. So maybe if I would try the other approach and point out some of the pitfalls of when people ask for money. And no offense, but often technical founders, i.e. inventors, can be among the most difficult people to invest in. So just be warned, there may be some things here that are a little bit in your face, because we've had to deal with this a lot. So first, I do have the disclaimer. I'm not going to try to be offensive, but just the realities of the situation may make some people uncomfortable. And under those people that can't get their minds around that, they should self-fund. And I'm not trying to be mean there, but you should always self-fund if you can, to at least some level. You can bootstrap. And I'm going to be talking specifically about raising money or not raising money from angel investors who invest in very specific kinds of deals that have certain terms, that have certain expectations, and that are well beyond the range of normal types of investments. These are things that we're hoping are going to be big plays down the road and are a minor part of anyone's portfolio, because as you will find out, they're super risky. So I'm going to educate a little bit, I'm going to tell some stories, and we'll field questions at the end, and we'll see where we end up if I can make it back to the car or not. So there is an old adage, which is more than a little true, which is if you ask for money, you'll get advice, but if you ask for advice, you might get money. Not that you should just immediately ask for advice from everyone you see, but it's often the case. And that is because this is a relationship business, and I cannot stress that enough. It is based on personal interactions with folks you don't know, and they don't know you, and you are getting into a very long-term relationship with somebody. This is not somebody buying shares of Apple or something like that. This is a very personal thing. And people are investing their personal money that they hope to see a return on, because they hope this is going to go towards their kid's college fund or their retirement or something. This is not change found in the couch cushions. It's a significant chunk. So this is the amazing fact, and the very positive fact that I want to talk about here first, that it's possible to receive funding from your venture for someone who doesn't know you or even have any particular reason to trust you. That's absolutely amazing when you stop and think about it. Someone comes up with a good idea, you develop a relationship. This is not like Shark Tank. That's near total falsehood. And I should point out that when it hits due diligence, 2/3 of the deals that you see get consummated on television never actually are finalized. So there is a lot of background material there. But the amazing thing is that it does work. The sad thing is it doesn't work that often. So you have to be aware of that and what our deal funnel is like. And one of the things I want you to take away from this is, what is it like on the other side of the table to the investor? Okay, because one of the major failings of entrepreneurs is they do not adequately understand what we're looking for, what we're worried about, what we need to see. Instead, they tell us stuff that they want to say. And that's not a way to really market your idea. And I'm going to get into that in a bit. There's going to be a fair amount of repetition here just because I really want to make some points. So please bear with me on that. So first, let me help you understand how an angel group works with deal flow and what our expectations are in terms of returns and why we're looking at this little thin slice. Because if you're not in this little tiny Venn diagram of possible angel deals, you shouldn't be talking to angels other than to say, hey, I want to pick your brain about something, I have this idea. And we're full of advice. We like to help people. Many of us are entrepreneurs. ourselves or have been entrepreneurs, and so we really want to help. But if it's asking for money, then that's a whole different thing. And if you're not going to be in that little pie slice of those types of deals, you shouldn't waste your time. So first, these are the statistics of looking for the process of even presenting in an angel group. So we pre-screen, and this is a reasonably formal thing. People have applied to the Angel Investor Forum, for example, via our online portal called GUST that we share with a number of other angel groups. We also get things that just appear to us on GUST. We have things where we meet people and then develop relationships and then maybe bring them in. But about 1 in 4 of these random sort of interactions actually leads to progressing to something that's an official screening, whereby a select group of people get through and decide, okay, we had 30 submissions this month. We're now going to look at 8 of them and decide which 2 or 3 we're going to bring in. Because I'm not kidding, I get at least 30 a month if I counted all the sort of casual interactions and crazy emails from literally across the planet. Apparently they do not read our issues, but our requirements for being local. Yeah.
Could you perhaps spell GUST or do something, because I don't know.
Oh, sure, it's GUST.
Okay.
It used to be AngelSoft, which was interesting, except if you typed in AngelSoft, you went to the toilet paper site. Which I thought was somewhat strangely appropriate, because most of our deals end up in the crapper too. So, anyway.
Is it .com, .org?
It's gus.com. Yeah, and it's for entrepreneurs and angels, and it's pretty good. I mean, we all complain about it, but it's what we've got. And it used to be worse, so there's that. So you can see the numbers here. There's a lot of fallout in the deal funnel. And then actually getting through screening, you get to present. About here, 1 in 12 or so might actually get in to present to the group. And then maybe 1 in 3 of those get into diligence. And then after the diligence level, we'll actually pass the due diligence test and go forward. And then about half of those will actually be able to raise money at that point. So at the end of the day, it's a single-digit percentage. Couple of percent, 2, 3%, 4%, is basically nationwide from the huge deal funnel that comes in, the number of actual companies that get funding from an angel group. Now, I will say a lot of the people at this end of the funnel, a lot of the companies, are terrible. They don't meet any of our criteria, or they're missing huge chunks. They're from the Ukraine. And by this I mean the company is located in the Ukraine. So while they're applying to a Connecticut angel group, it's obviously a sign of desperation. So we're not going to jump on that. They're looking for $1 gajillion. They are in, it's clear this is not the kind of deal that we're looking for at all. So at least half of the deals right off the bat are totally not acceptable and are not real competition for these final slots. But even so, we're talking double the final rate, you're still talking about a 6% or so success rate. So let's hear about from the angel's perspective. So you have a blizzard of people applying for money. Every event you go to, there are people breathlessly coming over to jam business cards in your general direction. It's awful, but we have to do it. On top of that, angel investing is extremely risky. About 10 or 20% of your investments will bring most, if not all, of your real returns. The median return is negative. I want you to think that in. This is after things have gone through that whole funnel. You've had due diligence, you'd have buy-ins from all kinds of different people, and still your median return is negative. So this is why there are so few angel investors, because it is a horrible level of attrition. And a lot of people can't stomach it. I mean, people that are looking to see what did our stocks do today and bouncing it out, I mean, this is totally the opposite mindset. This is, I'm going to hope for the best that in 7 or 8 years I'm going to look smart. But for right now, I cannot predict which of these 10 or 20 or 30 investments I've made are actually going to work out at the end. And ones that we thought were, oh, this is great and it's going to work out, they've tanked. And some that we were like, yeah, I don't know how it's going to go, have worked out okay. So this is us, this is VCs, this is this whole space. It is impossible to really pick winners. Picking losers is easy, but not picking winners. However, why do we do this at all? You think, gosh, these people must be idiots. If you look at the overall portfolios from a whole bunch of angels and a whole bunch of industries, the actual returns are terrific. There's an internal rate of return of 27% a year. It's the highest performing asset class, at least it was. I assume it still is. This whole pre-seed end, it beats out VCs, it beats out the market, it certainly beats out gold. Any of these other things that you think of as investments. It is terrific, but it's extraordinarily granular. It's a very quantum event. Either this company's going to do really well, or you're going to lose everything. And you're going to lose everything a lot faster than getting money back. So you're going to be sitting around looking like an idiot for 4 years as things are tax write-offs before you start to get some hits. The bottom line is for this whole thing to work out is you're looking for a 10 to 30x possible return over a 5 to 7 year lifespan, which gives you a projected IRR of your total, all of your deals of about 0.6 or 60% a year possible from that deal to be an angel deal. And the reason is 2/3 of these guys are going to die, so you're going to get left with a good return at the end of the day because you have a couple of real winners that drag everything up. That's what you hope for. But it's a very long, hard road. And it's important that our valuations on the companies is a very important feature because as valuations creep up, returns go down, has a catastrophic effect on this, and it doesn't make any sense. So that's something we're particularly sensitive to, and that people that come in with crazy valuations that, oh, my company's worth this, even though it's pre-sales, I don't have a team, and whatever. We're not very sympathetic on that front. I will say overall, we're fairly sympathetic, and we like to work with people, and if people are willing to be coached and learn, we will do that. But the problem comes in when people are sure they are right, and they're especially sure about the things that they don't know, and that's a real problem. I want to highlight this one thing. Everything in angel investing flows from this idea that if we set that as a criteria for what an angel deal is, you can see that's a very select group of deals. This eliminates lots and lots and lots of really good businesses, but they're not an angel deal. They do not meet that criteria, and they're not going to give you that kind of return. So let's talk about what makes a bad angel deal, since this is what not to do. So number one on this list is lifestyle business. We see this a lot. And by lifestyle business, this is someone's going to start a nice business, maybe a family business. And they're going to have a nice salary, and it's going to make some money. And we're investors, and we kind of want to get our money back plus something. That's the whole point of doing this. And if it's a lifestyle business, we will never, ever see our money back. So anything that starts to smell like a lifestyle business, we get very concerned about. And we have deal terms that we can invoke that are very draconian to prevent lifestyle businesses from forming. Our notion is we need an exit at some point that's reasonable. And if you're not ready to do that and have an exit, then you're talking to the wrong folks. Go out and have a bake sale and hope that works. But don't expect us to put money to fund your family business that we're never going to get a nickel out of.
What do you define lifestyle business, please?
Well, classic lifestyle businesses would, basically anything that you think of as a family business that's never going to exit. It's never going to go public, it's never going to get merged, it's never going to get bought by somebody else. It's just going to be the so-and-so and Sons window store or whatever. Almost every panel van you see go by is a lifestyle business. People have it, they're comfortable in it, they're going to have a good salary, it's going to be something that's going to be of value to their children, but your investors are never going to get anything back from that, unless the terms are written in. It's not really an angel deal either, because it's not likely to yield the kinds of returns that we would need. But what we are concerned about is something that would morph into a lifestyle business from what started out as an angel deal. Crazy valuations, as I mentioned, are a real problem. We expect to have an aggressive discussion on this because that is the way of things. But if people are extraordinarily inflexible, that's a sign that they really don't have the temperament to do this. Flawed management is a huge issue, and we'll discuss that a lot further. A subset of that is stubborn founder, and I'm not talking about someone that's persistent and hardworking, but someone who is stubborn, that says, and I have been involved in companies like this, you know, I haven't been able to raise money for 7 years, but I'm not willing to change a damn thing. That's not what they said, but that is what they ended up doing. It's like, you know, maybe doing this isn't working. You know, how many times do you have to touch the hot stove before you say, I'm going to stop burning myself? Some people are just, they're so sure they're right, that doesn't matter. And you know, fine, go off, enjoy it, do it, but I'm not going to pay you to do that. Complex financials, where it's really hard to see where the money's going to come from for the company. Lots and lots of licenses or very complex schemes, and we do run into this somewhat with university and licensings and things like that, but things that go beyond that, that just get so complex, it's really hard to tell who's going to get what, makes financial modeling difficult. And if it's that difficult, why should we bother? Because I just showed you, we're getting, you know, 30 to 1 applications. We can only look at 1 out of 30 or 40 that come through, and we get things handed to us from Connecticut Innovations. We get things handed to us from the Angels of Boston and New York. So if you make it tough for us, we're going to say, sorry, you know, we're lazy. We're going to take these deals that we know are good, where we don't have to do this level of work. Oops. Capital-intensive businesses can be difficult, where it's clear that you're going to need to do a lot of raises. You're coming to us, and maybe initially you're looking to do an early round of a couple $100,000 to $1 million, which is pretty easily, not easily, but accomplishable in Connecticut between CI and us and other groups. But when you get beyond that, and it's going to be a much bigger raise, that starts to raise flags, because we're going to be a minor player in that. There's going to be potential management issues and control issues that are going to be uncomfortable. And if you know you're going to need VC money going on, that raises a whole other level of concern about our rounding and a cram down and what protections we have on that, which is the final answer, not really a whole lot, because the next round gets to negotiate whatever they want. And so they can negotiate away a lot of our stuff. So we are very concerned about what happens afterwards. Not that we won't do something in capital-intensive businesses. Lots of biotech, for example, falls in that category, and that's a personal favorite of mine, given my history. But you know, I acknowledge it takes a bunch of money. That's unusual for a software company. This is a big one too. That it really isn't an investment. It's an idea or a research project. I'm not kidding. I get emails all the time from people that have these ideas. They need some money to formulate this, to do whatever. But it's not an investable business. It's you know, look, if you want to do that, if you're in the sciences, go to the NIH. If they're willing to fund you, that's great. Develop something. You know, there's lots of folks out there that will provide funding, not easy funding, but funding for getting your idea off the ground and turning it into a company. But that's not an angel dollar. We're not going to have someone come in, draw something on the back of a napkin, shake hands, and write a check. You know, that's fantasy. Little chance of a large return that just naturally eliminates things. Bad timing is something that's often not appreciated. You could come up with a terrific idea, terrific invention, be ahead of your time, and as investors we would be screwed. Because it doesn't matter that it's a great idea if there's no one there ready to buy it or understand it. If you have to convince a market to do something, that's hard to do, to come in. And I will point out, just in a very large scale, one of Apple's major successes, it's not because they were so innovative exactly. They made things easy to use after other people had already done basic things. The iPod was pre-staged by lots of MP3 players, but if you ever had one, each one was its own little world, and my gosh, you get one to work, and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool, but boy, now I need a different one or whatever. The iPod was just, it worked, it was seamless. You went zip, a 3-year-old could practically do it. My 4-year-olds know how to use an iPad better than I do, even. Well, not really, but I mean, they use it pretty well. So it's pretty amazing. And just to point out, they were not the first on any of those technologies, but they made it successful. And other people that are groundbreakers aren't around anymore. So I'm just pointing out, timing can be super critical. Uber would not have been Uber if it came out 5 years before, where people did not have there were not a critical mass of folks with smartphones who could take advantage of that app. So it's a great idea, and someone could have had it back then and started funding a company. And I don't even know the history. Maybe there were several companies, but obviously they're not around anymore either. So you have to be cognizant of timing. It's more important than people realize. Now, this is something I want to make a point of. This is something that's unfortunate, but given the volume of deals we have to do with, investors are looking for a reason to say no up front, to be quick and easy, and to filter through the 60 or so applications, be they formal or informal, to find the one or two gems that maybe need to go on to the next level. That's just a fact of our life. We can't spend 5 man-hours on each one of those things, or we do nothing else. Not even probably time for sleeping or whatever. It just is not doable. So if someone, for example, isn't reasonably local to us, we'll say no. If people are looking for crazy amounts of money without a really good reason, we'll say no. If people don't fall into that right spectrum of what's an angel deal of a possible IRR of 60%, we'll say no. If people are doing things without really much support and are desperate, we'll say no. And there's a lot of examples I'm going to have coming up on this. This is something that occurred to me a couple of weeks ago when I was dealing with some companies and having to spend an inordinate amount of time in a conversation to figure out what the investment hypothesis was here. The entrepreneur had no shortage of talking, no shortage of trying to make points, but they did nothing to explain, why is this an investment? Why should I give money to you? Or in this case, why should I be a spokesperson for you to our group and bring you in? I have not heard. How am I going to make money? How is this going to work? This tech that you're talking about sounds interesting, but so what at the end of the day? You have to show that it's going to mean something. So it's not my job to figure out why I should invest in your venture. That's your job, and you better be good at it, because there's a lot of competition out there. Now we're getting to the more unpleasant parts here. It's not me, it's you. Because this is the truth of the matter. 65% of all these early stage business failures are due to the management team, which means the managers, which usually means the founders in our case. And this is the image of a mirror to have everyone to think about it. Look in the mirror and say, hey, am I one of those guys? Do I need to do something differently? What are my weaknesses? What are my strengths? What am I going to do about my weaknesses? This kind of introspection is surprisingly rare. The classic lone wolf inventor scares the hell out of us because they are so sure, they've worked so long, they've got this thing out there, and this widget is going to revolutionize, fill in the blank. And they have no management team, no skills, no whatever to get out there into the market, but they know they're right. And they're not willing to hear otherwise. And they're not willing to really, they've gripped this thing so tightly they can't let it go. How do you invest in somebody like that? You know it's not going to work. And I know now that about some early investments I made at AIF where we had inventors who came up with very clever products and all these things and were really good at one-on-one sales, but created bad management teams and also were unable to scale their business because it was all their one-on-one selling and they couldn't make it work to amplify the kind of returns that you need. So take a look in the mirror, because the number one problem is going to be you. And since I'm also involved in early stage companies, the problem is me too. And so it requires introspection. And one of the major skills of good entrepreneurs are they are coachable and they listen to a lot of different voices and take advice and don't let ego get in the way. And they also know that it may be important at one time for them to step out of the way for the good of the company and for the good of the process of having their invention actually get out there and work. So let's talk about some of the founder management team issues, and I probably have got too many stories to talk about here, but there's lots that fill in and inform these. One biggie, and you may run into this, all these people that want you to sign NDAs. Angels don't sign NDAs. we can't keep track, in early stages. The only time we would sign an NDA as an individual is if we were in deep due diligence and someone needed to look at the original code, or I need to go in and look at the actual biology, the results, the chemical compound they're talking about, whatever, as a total, like, I'm gonna check this out and make sure it's not bullshit that we're basing this all on, for example. But that's like one person out of the whole team and for a very specific purpose and a very narrow thing. When I hear people say, I need you to sign an NDA, it's like, why? What are you so afraid of? Is your idea so easy to steal? I'm gonna invest in that? I don't think so. It's not gonna survive contact with the market. Someone else is just gonna do it if that's the problem. So I understand there are certain secrets, but you don't need to tell me those secrets to get an investment. I may need to delve into certain of those, or our team will, when we really get into the weeds. But up front, no. And this is something a lot of inventors and a lot of people have spent a long time creating something. They are very possessive. And it's a real red flag when someone says we want to sign an NDA, because it's a sign that they're not mature in this space. They don't understand that NDAs are almost never signed. VCs don't sign them, angels don't sign them. We don't steal your ideas. Who has the time? It really is not a problem. A technical founder who doesn't understand their weaknesses and take steps to address them. For example, if I was a technical founder, I would definitely want to have a chief operating officer who's going to take care of real stuff getting done, because I am terrible at that. I'm going to have a marketing person because I'm okay but not great at that. These are all skills that you need to plug in and bring into a real company. We run into this a lot. People get overly concerned with control issues. And we actually just had a deal that broke down in due diligence where one of the entrepreneurs was worried, I think, about being edged out. And they started raising all kinds of concerns over founder stock and what would happen. So if people are concerned about having outside board members and losing control, I say, yeah, you're going to lose control. You're asking for outside money. It's not your company anymore. It's all of our companies. We're all putting money in, and you're putting in your time. And if you want to do it yourself, then fund it yourself, and don't waste my time, because it's really that's the way it has to be. Governance issues are huge. Entrepreneurs need to recognize that, and board members need to be activists. There are times the board has to fire the CEO. It should happen more often than it does, frankly. There's also times when the board needs to be very supportive of the CEO and help them through issues and help them to grow. A good board really makes a good company, and a bad board will kill even a good company. So these are issues that have to get dealt with. Somebody that doesn't have any skin in the game, they never got put money into it at all. We understand people's circumstances are different, but if someone has a pretty decent background and they haven't put a nickel into the company other than $100 or whatever to start an LLC, that's sort of a bad sign, a lack of confidence. And especially if they do that and yet they expect when this comes through and we get funding, as CEO, I'm going to be drawing a market value CEO salary. Well, the trouble with market value CEO salaries is those are not for founders. Those are for people that have gotten brought in long after the founding thing to run some company. They're not getting 30 or 40 or 50 or 60% of the company. They're getting maybe 10% of the company. So you're, I'm not going to get too deep in the weeds here, but your equity compensation here is huge, so your salary is less, because we really want to drive you into the looking for an exit for the company that's going to be lucrative, where you're going to make $10 million, and sure, your salary's not going to be awesome getting there, but it'll be okay. You can pay the mortgage, but then there's the big payoff, and that's where we get paid off, because we don't make a nickel until you get to an exit. We see this a lot too. The current CEO simply can't present well to other funding sources that they're going to need to. For whatever reason, some people have a real difficulty in public speaking, and we get that, and we can coach that, and we can help. But there's some folks that are just surprisingly impenetrable and that you can coach all you want on how to present and talk with people, and they just don't get it. I remember seeing people presenting to our group it was a scientific group long ago. Fascinating idea, it was really good. And the entrepreneurs were just clearly exasperated that the audience was not following along with their technical superiority and achievement. Well, I'm the only biologist in the room, so I mean, first off, that's, it's going to be difficult. And making your audience, who's full of, these are angel investors who've all been very successful in a variety of ways, making them feel dumb, rolling your eyes while answering questions, doesn't go over well. So there was some damage control there, but it was not going to happen. And that was really unfortunate. The founder would rather be CEO, regardless of whether that's the best thing or not for the company. There's a great book by Noam Wasserman, who's a professor up at the Harvard Business School, that wrote, was it the Founder's Dilemmas or the Entrepreneur's Dilemma? I think it's the Founder's Dilemmas. And it talks about lots of the issues that face founders and the choices that have to be made. And one of the big choices is, do I want to be king or do I want to be rich? Because you can be king of a small company, you could bootstrap it. That's great. I mean, you want to create your own company, create your own life, and work it. That's awesome. But that's not a bring in outside money kind of company. The other is, hey, I want this thing to grow like crazy. I want it to be worth a lot, and then I'm going to sell it and go on to my next dream. That's the sort of the more get-rich thing, and that is, hey, you need outside capital to accelerate that and to make that a reality. Another issue is the sort of what we call trust momentum, which is when you're meeting with folks, you start out, you just meet someone at an event like this, or you're at the CVG event, and someone buttonholes you and you have a short conversation, and then you see them again, and then maybe you bring them in to screen or to talk at the group, and then you get into diligence. And the question is, as you're going on and due diligence is a very unpleasant process for everybody, because we're always poking at stuff and testing assumptions and arguing over all kinds of things. And it's a real test of character, which frankly is probably its most important thing, not whether or not someone's business plan is going to survive contact with reality, because it won't. We all know that. But how does the entrepreneur deal with all this? Are they able to provide? You need documents, you need analyses, you need whatever. Can they do it? Do they work well? Are they honest or not? Are they too salesy? We've definitely had people that came in and it was clear they were trying to sell us on something like it was a used car only used by little old lady going to church on Sundays. And we're like, next. That's just not play. This is totally a relationship business. And if people do not, I don't want to say like you, that sounds too trivial. But if people don't get you and appreciate you and figure out why you're a good person to work with, they will move on to the next thing. Because why should we stay with someone we have qualms about when there's so many other people out there clamoring for money? So building and maintaining trust is critical, and you do not want to be this guy. Even if you get away with it a little bit, this is a relationship. These people are going to be on your boards of directors. These people are going to be trying to promote you to other angel groups or to CI, that's Connecticut Innovations here in the state, or whomever. And if you poison the well by lying about anything, by misrepresenting, I understand marketing. It's not about truth, but you have to be very aware. This is different. This is more like science, where trust and honesty are a premium. So I have a mixed marriage because my wife is a marketer and I'm a scientist, so it's amazing to work. But she'll say things and I just go, oh, she can't really say that. It's not really that. Whatever. Anyway, we've worked it out. So yeah, you have to be very careful to be honest, and you're allowed to put the best shine on your apple you want to, but don't tell me it's an orange, okay? Even though they're both fruit, so there's sort of some similarity, it's an apple. And make it the best apple you can, that's fine, but don't mislead me. So let's hear about bad founder behaviors. A wantrepreneur, we see that unfortunately a lot. They're legion at many of the state's co-working facilities. These are the folks that hang out, tap on their computers, talk to people, and drink coffee, and you're not quite sure what they're doing, but they're around. And I'm not sure they know quite what they're doing. Some of them have little businesses and they're working on, and that's fine. But again, a entrepreneur cannot be an angel investment because that's a whole different ballgame. That's like big time, big league. Not that you need a ton of people, but it's going to have something that's going to have to really grow at a crazy rate to support those kinds of returns. Somebody who's difficult, unnecessarily antagonistic, deals poorly with criticism, uncoachable. And I wish I wasn't talking about one of the CEOs of the company I invested in, but I am. He's now not the CEO anymore. Finally, the board did what it needed to do. A little too late, but they replaced him. Because if he had any criticism of anything, he would go and pout for 4 or 5 weeks and not communicate with anybody and then come back. And I'm not even exaggerating. This is what would happen. So things didn't get done, and this company was failing because it couldn't sell stuff, and they had to bring in someone who knew what to do. So you don't want to be that person. Lack of focus, scattered ideas. I get some crazy emails, and I recently got a crazy string of emails that I have saved. And I had great pleasure in foisting this person off on Connecticut Innovations because they're paid to deal with that. I'm just a volunteer. They're responsible for behavior like this. So they got this guy. In the space of his first paragraph, which was not overly long but not short, he talked about the time here, the time in China, his Hong Kong attorney that worked with this company he'd known for years, the superiority of Confucian logic, and segued into Star Trek somehow. And went on into this whole thing, and I was kind of reading with sick fascination, wondering where the hell this was going to go, and what idea he had. And I gave my standard response. It was like, thank you very much for your interest, but we only invest locally. And he said, but I'm in East Haddam, Connecticut. And I thought, oh, did I miss that? I had not missed that. The only reference was somewhere down there. He had referenced the East Haddam Eagle Scouts on a total other tangent, but I mean, I did not pick up on the clue that that's where he was from. So that, unfortunately, I had made the mistake of making my objection addressable. So then I had to respond again. Meanwhile, I got another 3 emails of increasingly intense things about how I cannot keep this opportunity from our membership, and they have the right to whatever. And I basically said, dude, you can meet anyone you want to at a CVG event, and I'm not going to prevent you from doing that. And if you want to develop a relationship, you go right ahead. And it was just, there were 4, 5, 6 business things that were totally unrelated to each other that he was presenting, any one of which sounded like a fairly bad idea. So I just want to point out, there are those people, and they waste an inordinate amount of time. And unfortunately, they can suck the oxygen out of a room or an event. I get buttonholed like that, and it's hard to get away from somebody, and that means I don't have time to talk to somebody else. And that upsets me, because I want to say, okay, if there are 10 people that want to talk, I'm going to soldier on. I'll give everybody 3 minutes or whatever, and we'll do that. But you can't when somebody gets in there and just digs in. Again, idea of perfection, a classic, bad planning. I really need money in the next month, or my company's going to fold. I'd say, I'm sorry. We don't even get people invited in within that period of time. People need to have an expectation. It's going to take 6 months or so from the time you make contact, at least, to where funding can happen. If you need money that desperately, you should have talked to us a long time ago. This shows a bad understanding of our process, and we're not secretive about this. And it shows a bad planning, which are not great CEO skills. So if they've already failed at that level, it's really reflects poorly on their potential going forward. This is a pet peeve of a number of people in our group. They didn't research our criteria. We say, look, we'll invest somewhat locally, Connecticut, New York, Massachusetts. Occasionally there's other things that are a bit of a flyer. But, if you're from Texas, or why are you bugging us? There's angel groups in Texas, and if they don't like you, what makes you think we will? I've gotten buttonholed at events where again, and I'll get to this at the very end, where an entrepreneur just was going on and on about the tech and what they were doing, and it was sort of interesting. And I was like, but wait a minute, what are you looking to raise here? He said, oh, I need $10 million. I was like, where are you from? He said, oh, it's Australia. I'm like, why are you talking to me? He says, go find a VC. No angel investor is going to do that, have that kind of money. If you've already got a consortium together and we can plug into it, that's a different thing. But we're not going to invest in Australia, especially for your, I think this had something to do with interesting high temperature waste disposal, but I may be misremembering. Mostly I got pissed because he was between me and the bar and another 5 people with their cards out. I was like, I just gave a talk, and I'm not even get a drink in a canopy. So one of the sponsors finally came over with a glass of wine. I was terribly appreciative. It was nice. We like to get referrals. We're not secretive. It's easy to find one of our members. It's easy to find people that know us. We're at CVG events. We're at Cure events. We're at CTC events. We're here. We go to the CT Next Entrepreneur Innovation Awards, which you all ought to consider. They're very easy places to have a simple conversation, to have a meet and greet and get involved. And if you find someone that has an interest in what you're doing, that's great. You want to cultivate that relationship. You don't want to overwater it and kill the plant. I'm just telling you, right? But you definitely want to nurture that along, because you can get great advice. And even if it's not an angel deal, like I was saying, people are often willing to help. And they'll say, oh, that's an interesting idea. You should go talk to so-and-so. They can help you with that. Or, oh, if you need this or that resource, you should try this. That's a great way to do it. That's a very mature way. And someone that comes to us with no referral at all, it's a little suspicious if they're from nearby. It's like, where exactly have you been? Connecticut's a small state. There are events all over the place, and if we've never seen you there, why is that? Not everyone's creating the next great thing in their garage. Again, obsessed with owning their own company. They want to be a king, and that's just a prescription for disaster for an investor. Getting upset over common deal terms with investor rights, issues about redemption, founder vesting. This can be a huge issue. We just had this blow up a deal. This is the notion that founders come in and they own 90% of the company or whatever, and you're going to bring outside money in, and the outside money generally ends up owning between 20 and 30% of the company, kind of at each round. That's roughly what happens. So the founders are now down to, let's say, 70%, and it's split between, I won't even split, let's say it's one person, which we'd never invest in just one person, but just for the purpose of math here. 70% of the company. We'll say, look, we'll give you right now X% as equity, but then you're going to get the rest of that equity that you own now, the 70%, will vest over the next 5 years, which means that every month another percent or whatever will come and be yours to have and to hold, regardless of whether you stay or go. But if you leave the company, if you get fired by the company for cause, which means basically fraud and terrible behavior, or you get hit by a bus, the stuff that has invested goes back to the company, because the company is going to need that to hire somebody. And there may be a buyback agreement where we will buy it back at its initial par value, which is usually some infinitesimal percentage of a cent. So you get like $100 back or something. And a lot of entrepreneurs go, wait a minute, you're taking my company away from me. I said, no, we're making sure it succeeds. Because especially when there's multiple founders, do you want to have your co-founder who you're having a bit of friction with say, I'm just going to leave the company, I'm going to take my 30%, and I'm not going to have to do a lick of work to make that work out. I'm going to start a new company, and I'm going to get the equity from that, and get a salary from that while you stay behind and take care of our baby. I'm going to go off and have fun with this new bright shiny thing, and I get exactly what you get at the end of the day. That is one reason why companies implode. No one wants to be the person left behind taking care of the company that's now needs a lot of work. So the idea is if you leave, you leave. You've earned something up to this point, and then the extra goes off. I'm probably over explaining this, but it's very disconcerting to people when you kind of explain why it's there, and you basically ask, are you planning on leaving the company in the next 4 years? They say no. And you're like, well, then there's no problem, okay? This is a safety device to make sure that people are aligned and are staying close by. Bad relations with other management team members. One of the reasons why people are very skittish of husband and wife teams. I should say, surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly. Obviously it's an additional stress. You're married, plus you've got this company, plus you're getting it started, and it can be an issue. But moreover, I have seen presentations where the CEO is presenting and the other person is kind of interjecting stuff in a way that you see they're being very corrective, and you can tell in the body language that they're just like, I think, wow, like I want to spend a nickel on these guys. This doesn't look good. So you don't want to be this guy. It's kind of the summation. Sure, that's Doc Brown, and he was right. Eventually did invent time travel. This is 30 years before that. His investors are probably dead by the time he invented time travel. Instead, his mind-reading device didn't work. He had a personal family fortune, so he could do whatever the hell he wanted. God bless him. But you wouldn't invest in him. Okay. You also don't want this business plan where, yeah, I got this terrific idea that's going to make a bunch of dollars, but it's a little bit lacking in the middle. Okay? And honestly, it's sometimes, but not usually this bad. However, there usually are huge deficits in a business plan, albeit a quick design, whatever. We don't need to necessarily have 50 pages of the most intimate thoughts on this topic, but there are some major problems, and I'm going to try and distill this down for what the major problems are in the whole area of the business plan. No market research. Now, of course, it depends on the industry a bit, but if it's something that's going to involve actually selling something to people, you want to be asking them up front, hey, if I build this, would you buy it? And what do you think you'd be willing to pay for it? These kind of conversations are essential. If you're going to be selling apps to enterprise, you want to be developing relationships with these people and talking to them, saying, hey, I have this great idea to make your life better because of this pain point you have. And they say, great, what's your idea? And you talk about like, oh, that'd be neat. I said, so if I did that, would you buy it? If they go, I don't know. It's time to rethink things, all right? And this is not a joke. This happens all the time. There's actually a case I heard about that to me was delightfully perverse because it showed how human nature works and can screw up the best idea. And it was totally out of left field, and in retrospect, it made total sense. This involves a medical device, and I won't get into details, but it was correcting a common problem that occurred during surgery. When surgeons would make a mistake and then they'd have to go back in and do it. And these guys figured out an elegant way to solve the problem, but they were having trouble getting traction. And so they hired some people to come in and actually figure out what was going on. Because they'd gotten all these grants. They had a huge SBIR2, phase 2 grant to go through. They've been very successful raising money because it was a big problem. There's a stack of research saying it's a big problem. It needs addressing. So folks came out and they dutifully went in. They started talking to cardiothoracic surgeons, lovely people, and said, hey, so there's this problem that some people have. And I'm like, yeah, I've heard about that. And I said, so these guys came up with this device. What do you think? And they're like, God, that's so simple and ingenious. I'm jealous. I wish I had invented that. That's a great idea. And then they said the question that no one, the inventors, had never asked, would you buy one? And they said, oh, well, no, I never had that problem. Nobody had that problem because you didn't want to be the guy who used the device saying, yeah, I'm an idiot. So major unmet health need that apparently remained unmet. I don't know whether under the current ACA there'd be a drive to solve this or not, but at least then there wasn't. So that might actually be an example of timing. Right now it might be good timing. Back then the company folded. And thankfully it folded before the investors were hurt as well. So I cannot overestimate the importance of this, of really having heart-to-heart, getting out there and talking to people. If you ever read any of the lean launch stuff and startup materials, this is one of their essential things. Go out there and actually talk to people, talk to the market, constantly test your hypotheses and iterate. Another problem that ends up being the business plan, you don't really understand what the customer pain is, because it needs to be fairly significant. There needs to be a real problem you're solving, not just it's kind of a little better. Now, I'll be the first to admit, I have no idea why there are so many kinds of water that get sold. There's not a customer pain that gosh, I really need a different kind of purified water to drink because these other 10 brands are not meeting my needs. But somehow there is. Now we have coconut water. Who knew, right? So I admit this is not always true. But somehow that's marketing. That's like voodoo, right? They get people to buy water. It's water. The other problem is the market is too small, or the value proposition is weak. If your value proposition is we're going to save you money a little bit, that's hard to get people to change. Because again, you've got to say, if that is your value proposition, are you saying you got to go back and do this? If I do this and it's cheaper, are you going to buy it? Some cases yes, some cases no, because it's often a more complex transaction than what you're thinking of. A solution in search of a problem. A really big problem with technical founders. They come up with an idea. It's a really cool idea. They love it. They work on the tech. But it doesn't actually solve a problem that people are willing to pay for. So again, you can have a great solution, but you have to go back to this. And this is a huge important thing, that why your company will succeed or fail is, can you find a scalable way to acquire customers? And then, can you monetize those customers at a significantly higher level than your cost of acquisition? If it costs you $100 to get a customer and you're going to make $50 off them over the course of their interaction with you, you are dying, okay? You cannot do that. And those are important things to know. And this is why we like early revenue companies where they've gone out there and they've started pinging the market and getting some actual things sold, getting some market validation. Even a Kickstarter campaign, as you point out, can be good because it really can say, yeah, people want this and they're willing to pay whatever. You know, it's a good start. A bad competitive environment can be really scary to us because then it's like, why are you guys going to succeed and not this other group? Especially because, you know, they've already received VC funding, you're starting out. What's your significant advantage? And this comes under the heading of also ran ideas. And there's I've gotten in trouble for saying this before, but this is a problem in a lot of Connecticut companies where people have decent ideas that other people also have, and they're slightly different. And instead of saying, okay, I need to go back and re-engineer and figure out something that's new and exciting and go with that, you see the same companies. We see a lot of the same companies that have been around for 10 years. And we're like, wait a minute, didn't we look at those guys? Yeah. What are they doing now? It's, well, they're still sort of the same thing. They're still trying to get funding, and it's because, you know, there's 5 other companies out there doing the same thing. Why would we fund you guys? You know, the water example aside, it does happen. So I don't want to say it can't, but it's an important issue. Lack of meaningful barriers to others' entry, which is part of this competitive environment issue. So that's where IP does come in. IP can be very important, but we often see things that don't really have IP, and we appreciate that. However, we don't often feel that first mover advantage is worth as much as people think, but that's us. So let's get near the summation here, major turnoffs. And this comes under the heading, this is actually asked, we had a board meeting today and I asked our board members, what really bugs you about people asking for money? Like, you know, they didn't take time to understand what we want and need to see. And they end up wasting our time and their time, and it's really frustrating. So like for our group, it's the wrong niche for the group. They come in, you've got some, you know, without really getting into a good preamble of why this is going to work, something that's a, you know, consumer product that you're going to need to sell a gajillion units and it's a one-off sale. Those are really hard for us to invest in. A lot of people won't do it. They didn't provide the necessary information to judge the opportunity. Like this guy who emailed me, like the guy who talked to me at a conference, and it happens all the time. Are you local or not? How much are you looking to raise? What kind of time frame are you talking about? What kind of exit is possible with it? If you could just answer those 4 questions in the first minute, I mean, not unreasonable, then we get rid of our 4 major reasons to say no right off the bat, and we could proceed with dealing with what's interesting. But that's never what entrepreneurs do. Convertible notes can be somewhat problematic, especially if they don't have a cap. Unrealistic valuations that are going to crimp our possible returns. That's bad. This is more subtle, but probably far more important. which is knowing that someone's going to need to raise money multiple times, that between now and the next raise, there are not significant milestones that are going to sufficiently raise the valuation of your company so that the next raise will be at a higher valuation. This happens a lot, and if it's programmed into your business model, we're basically going to be very upset. We're going to say, look, why on earth would we invest now when the guys who invest 6 months from now are going to get exactly the same deal, but the benefit of seeing how you've actually performed over 6 months on our dollar? So even if we're not going to get crammed down in that round, we're getting no benefit for taking on this massive risk. So what you want to say is, you invest here, and we're going to hit this milestone and this milestone that are going to be significant value increasers. And then we're going to start the next raise, and it's going to consummate 6 months later. And by then, the company should be worth $10 million, and you guys invested when it was worth $3 million. And we're like, that's great. We may even do a follow-on round under those conditions. Bad corporate governance, boards, people that don't take care to have good board members, people that don't use their board or listen to their board effectively. All these things happen. Cap tables, capitalization tables. This is the list of ownership of the company, who owns what shares. Sometimes there's like 70 people on there in an early startup. You're like, who are these people that could potentially sue the company at some point over nothing, and I lose all my money? I kind of want to know. That's one of the advantages of being an angel group. You know the other people in it. You all come in, you're like, okay, we're not crazy people. We know things go south, and you have to sometimes agree to deal terms later on that you didn't want to, but we're all adults. But you don't know that of other people. This is what scares the hell out of me about online crowdfunding. You're going to suddenly have 100 people on your cap table that all have these crazy rights that are God knows what in terms of their maturity level and investing in the space. Because it is horribly risky, as I pointed out. And some people are not going to cotton well to that. When their third investment's going down the tubes, they're going to go nuts. And you don't want to be on it. I got a feeling that online crowdfunding, unless that is totally sufficient to get the company going, VCs will not touch it. I don't think that's going to be a thing. So common mistakes in actually pitching. If you get to the actual pitch, congratulations, it's a select group that actually gets to stand up in front of people. But you'd be surprised, not prepared. We give you 10 minutes, and at 10 minutes, you still haven't gotten to the part about how we're going to make money. That's a problem. 10 minutes and you still haven't talked about your market. That's a problem. So presentation too long is a major issue. And it's so simple. Get a timer, practice your talk. You'd think everyone would do it, but apparently not. Over discussing the technology or the product. This is a fun one. Poor review of the competition. As soon as you get up and start talking, you'll hear tap, 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 tap. People are Googling the hell out of your idea. And they'll say, there's 16 other companies doing this. What about so-and-so? And if you can say, if they're on your grid, first off, great, of competitors. But if they're not on your grid, and you can say, oh yeah, they are, they're not really competing because of this or that, and you can deal with that, that is to your benefit, all right? But if you are just like deer in the headlights time, it's like Google your own idea online. See who's out there. Who are we going to find in a little bit of investigation? It's remarkable how few people do this and how it really takes the air out of when people getting interested in something. They said, wait a minute, this doesn't seem so novel. And if you're the one to bring it up and to address it, that can be fine. But if we find the problem that you didn't know about, that is not fine. We don't like finding problems that you didn't know. Long-winded answers to questions where you're trying to, I guess, through force of will, convince people to invest by telling them everything you've ever thought about this topic and just bludgeoning them into submission. Not a good strategy. This is a biggie. You neglected to tell us how we're going to get our money back. Because we're investors. We may love entrepreneurship. We may love your technology and cheer it on. But we're investors. We want to at least have a hope that 1 in 10, this thing's going to actually return big returns. If you didn't tell us how that's going to work, then that's a problem. So I'm going to finish up here with 2 slides. This is how investors tend to view deals and evaluate in a simple fashion. There's lots of other stuff too. But basically, management, big issue, 60%. Market, important issue, 30%. Product, it's, you know, it's important. I don't want to minimize it. But that really comes at the end of the day, you know? Because if you have crappy management, the market is bad, we don't care what you made, okay? This, unfortunately, is what gets presented to us. Oh, didn't take my, oh, Max didn't do, I had this very glitzy font, like, yay, product. Anyway, but you get the point, right? Also, it's unstable. I should patent this. Does anyone watch Silicon Valley, by the way? You're good man. Remember the guy had his triangle of whatever, and they could manipulate him by pointing out how this worked in his triangle. I love it. Anyway, you should look at Silicon Valley on HBO. It's actually not too unrealistic, especially with how they screw up. It's really, really interesting. And there's plenty of times I'm like, I should make people watch this episode. Anyway, but this is unfortunately what we have to deal with. That you're so excited about this product you've worked forever on, you've grudgingly poked into the market to some degree. I'm probably being overly optimistic here on how much the market is on this slide. But you know, you've done something to justify it, and you kind of thought about management, you got some people together maybe, but not really focused on that. Now, I do want to point out that this should not be how you organize your presentation, because it is weird, even though management is the single most important issue, the single number one reason for failure, to have people just start out with a team, here we are, and here's why we're great. It's a little weird. I don't like that way of telling the story personally, and a lot of people, you know, there's different opinions, but I like it when people pitch and they say, here's this significant problem, here's our solution to it, here's the people that are going to execute on that solution, and here's how you're going to make your money. That's all the pitch needs to be. It's actually, you know, really easy, I think. But, you know, again, this is what we get. And, you know, somewhere here's how you're going to actually get your money out at the end of the day. So beware of this and be aware that you really need, when any interaction with an angel or any investor, your whole point is to get to the next meeting. It's not to tell them everything you've ever thought about. And if they say no, understand there's a lot of reasons to say no. There's a lot of areas I don't have deep expertise in, and so I am not going to logically comment on the product for that. I can maybe comment on the business and you know, what I feel about the founders, which is important. But then there's other areas like in biotech where I can go, you know, toe-to-toe with anybody and understand what's going on. So with that, I will conclude. And I hope I have not stretched your patience too much and made things seem too grim or flippant. But I do want you to get an appreciation for how hard it is to be an angel investor and to remain cheerful. Not only because it's tough in terms of your returns, and you always hope eventually you're going to look smart to your spouse. I'm still waiting on that front. But that is, you know, something you want to see.
You didn't screen your spouse according to that?
No, I really should have. The triangle of whatever.
Is your wife's name Carrie by any chance?
No.
His girlfriend.
Yes. So I'm happy to take any questions you have on this. We'll start at the front.
Excuse me. Early on, you did mention something about, you know, trying, I think it was on the very bottom one slide, how easily maybe somebody else could become your competitor or get in the business. But I didn't hear you mention anything about patent status, future possibilities, existing versus, I didn't hear
Well, that
anything.
was, what are the barriers to entry?
Yeah.
Yeah, because barriers to entry, and I just paid casual mention, I said that, you know, one IP is one of those.
I mean existing patents or that you would require a patent, or why don't you having to apply for a patent? Is any of that in your consideration?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it does enter into it. There are a number of areas where things are basically unpatentable. So we do get that. For example, in biotech, though, very important to have patent protection.
Right.
When you get into various computer programming issues and apps, they get to be a lot more difficult to patent.
I'm just going to turn off the recording.
Yep.
Do you ever do deals with the SAFE, the
Oh, the
simple
.safe
agreement
documents?
for equity?
Y Combinator document?